Welcome, everyone. My name is Bryce Med. I run a planning firm called Wealthy Tortoise out of Calgary. I used to live here, actually, and it was to my extreme delight to walk through the door and see some dear friends who are in attendance here. Alyssa and Rick and Lee, who doesn't have any recollection of who I am, but I just was tormenting him and saying that we met 25 years ago. So it's great to be here. But this is part of a collaboration that we've started in Calgary. Well, I don't know where Andersen started it, but I started a collaboration and relationship with Andersen around the Wealth and Wisdom series. And we also, in January of this year, into Calgary, brought Dr. Tom Deans, the author of 3 books, Every Family's Business, which in the face of most conversations, which was family succession and the transition of a business from a father to a child, some version, Tom, with the experience of his father and grandfather, came to the conclusion that the best thing to do was to maximize the value of the business and sell it and get the hell out. So that was his first book, which was quite controversial. And when we were at the Ranchman's Club in Calgary in January, Tom reminded me and himself that in that very room was where he had his first book launch for Every Family's Business. So that was kind of fun. He then subsequently wrote a book called Willing Wisdom, which is a book of, and really brings out seven questions that families ought to be asking themselves around the dynamic life that a will should have. And then last fall, he launched his third book called The Happy Inheritor. And that book is talking about the transition of family and legacy, which has been really fun work for me to do. And it's been a conversation that we've been having with the Andersen group in Calgary. That conversation has taken us to a place to be in the inquiry of what is necessary for that legacy and transition to happen. And in a room of professionals, as we are here today, oftentimes what we have encountered is the siloing of information and the protectionist approach to client relationship and the work that needs to go on. And we're advocating that what we need to do is we need to tear down those barriers. We need to recognize that they're there, be in the inquiry of why they're there, and are they doing any good by being there for that family enterprise. I'm of the opinion that, and if you were to, I was going to get you to play with some candy, but if you just took on the table and imagined that the conversation is focused on you as the silver water jug in the middle of the table, and then all of the glasses that are around the round tables represent one of the professional advisors to you, the person who is the water jug in the middle. And then what we do is we ask the question, if this was the scenario, so that is you, the client in the middle, and you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 10 or 12 advisors who are represented by glasses around the table. The question that we ask is, in this scenario, how many plans are in existence? Anyone care to hazard a guess? 1? About 12. Yeah, as many as there are glasses, which is just the most crazy and bizarre thing, because what actually happens is the client, that is a person that's stuck in the middle of these now 12 professional opinions, is wondering, because they think they have the plan. They're actually the people who, they have a plan in their own mind, but because of the siloing that's occurred amongst all of us as allied professionals, When was the last time I called my banker to get the information that I need about the enterprise and its lending information, or the bank called me to say, hey, do you know anything about what's happening with those two kids that are a little bit wayward? There's all of those kinds of conversations. It's the soft ingredients that make the difference in that family enterprise to be able to talk about its legacy. So we're really advocating, and Catherine and Shondell and myself, we've been brainstorming this whole idea that if we can really identify what's preventing us from having those conversations. I've done a bunch of work with the CPA community, and for smaller practitioners, it's a bit protectionist about who's going to get after my client, or are you going to break or interfere with my trusted relationship with that client? And so what do we need to do to make sure that that is treated respectfully? I'm an advocate that we have what I call unidirectional relationships. And what that means is that if I contact Simon because I need banking, the only thing that I expect from Simon is hellishly good banking. I do not expect a client in return, because what I'm doing is I'm doing what's in the best interest of my client when he needs lending and banking support, or legal or accounting or anything else. The flip of that is, so I have no expectation for any kind of reciprocity. I'm advocating that everybody take that kind of approach. And then the flip side of that is, if you had someone who needed the kind of planning service and advice that we provide, the only thing that you would expect from us is our best for your client, which allows us to hold each other responsible and accountable for what is it that we say we do and what do we do. So that's the way we've run our practice, and I'm really advocating that there needs to be a whole bunch more of that in a good, healthy, beneficial way. So I've had the privilege of being invited to come out and join you all. We've got Simon with Valley First, and I'm going to get the heck out of the way. Who's coming up first? Simon. Let me just check it works. Does it work? I'm pressing them all. Oh, there we go. So I don't know which one I pressed. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for that introduction and for the warm welcome there. Out of the two of us, out of Stephen and I'm just going to try and work on the wisdom bit, not the wealth. So if you're looking for wealth, Stephen, I'm going to do my best with some wisdom. So that's my plan. But good evening, and it's a real pleasure to be here with Andersen and with your fine distinguished group of professionals here. I just want to start with a bit of a quote before I jump into my presentation and my speech that's guided much of my thinking, and that's purpose is the engine of long-term prosperity. And so today, with global forces like economic shifts, climate urgency, digital transformation, and they're colliding with our local realities. And the bridge between those we like to think of is purpose. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. And that's connecting global vision to local impact. So I'm here to explore how values and purpose aren't just philosophical, they're practical tools for navigating complexity and creating sort of meaningful impact in what you do. So let me just ask you, let's see which one of these works. Oh no, not that one. Oh no, what have I done? Can we get slide number 3? There we go. Well, while that's working, coming up, just want to, I'll ask you, and this involves some participation. How many of you have felt the impact of a global event, whether it's a wildfire, a market shift, or a new technology right here in your own backyard? So
Raise your hand if you've seen one of those. Oh, Peter's got 2 hands. I think he would have put his feet up if he could as well. So it's clear that what happens globally shapes our lives locally. And so I'm going to take you back, though, to 2019, where life looked a little different for me. I was a brand new dad in North Vancouver, and I was working for HSBC in global trade and receivables finance. And our mission there back then was to bring global working capital solutions to the Canadian businesses of BC. And the idea was to help them scale internationally and really try and compete on that world stage. And it was quite exciting work at the time. We dug deep into understanding what our clients were doing, and we structured that growth capital that they needed to be able to expand and continue to grow. And we built relationships back then, or I built relationships back then that still matter to me today. And I would say many of those clients that I used to work with are still good friends with me today, which is great, which is a bit rarer than a zero free account, to be honest with you. So, but something was missing back then. And my wife, Naomi, and I, we were navigating new parenthood, and it was precious, chaotic, and fueled hugely by coffee at the time. But we dreamed of a home and a future with security and experiences for our family. But Vancouver's real estate market had a different plan for us. And wages weren't really keeping up at the time. And I started to feel restless. And that restlessness made me open to new opportunities. And HSBC was great. They trained me very well, and they paid me well, and they even dangled opportunities in other cities, which was great. But Canada felt like home for me and for Naomi. And we weren't ready to leave at that point. So that's when an old boss of mine phoned me up and said, "Oh, can you come up to the Okanagan? I've got something you might be interested in." And so we came up, spent the weekend with the president at the time. And that's when I came across the credit union model. Now, at that point, I'd never come across a credit union, been in HSBC and working with international clients. It wasn't something we came across. And back in the UK, we didn't really have credit unions as such, building societies, but they, over time, have been swallowed up by a lot of the big institutions. And so the role in question at the time was to lead our commercial banking division for Valley First, with the plan to diversify that business, so move away from being primarily real estate and a bit of hospitality into all the other industries that we have on our doorstep here in the Okanagan. And that's when I found what I call the warm and fuzzy in banking. And it is really hard to find that in banking. If anybody knows banking, it's not very warm and fuzzy generally. But we weren't, when I got to know the credit union, we weren't just financing deals at that point. We were building communities. And we knew our market, we knew our people, and every decision that we were working on was local. And so we had purpose, and that's what I was looking for. And we lived our values, and that was the missing piece that I didn't have at HSBC. And HSBC gave me the tools, and they gave me the ticket to Canada. They were the ones that brought me here in the first place. But this is where I had the opportunity to grow a business and to have a real impact, make a profit that we could then take that profit and reinvest that back into the communities that we serve here. And the benefit of that is not just for the community, but it's for the team members and for the community as a whole. And that's why I'm here today. So, because the way I look at banking, with purpose, it isn't just it isn't just possible, it's super powerful in my opinion. Now I need to, do you want to move to the next slide? There you go. So I want to talk about values. So this is the credit union. So this is what First West is made up. So First West is the overarching credit union. I lead the brands for Valley First and Enderby and District. And in the bottom left-hand corner here, this was where we started back in 1946. And a group of farmers sat around a table, and all the major institutions had left town, and so they needed finance. So this is when Penticton Credit Union came about back in 1946. And through mergers, we joined with Island Savings and Envision, and I lead the Valley First and Enderby Districts region. So this is who we are. But what I want to talk about is values, and not just as slogans, but as strategic actions. And in our organization, we talk about two kinds of values. So foundation values like integrity and community, and they're our anchors. They don't change with the market, and they guide every decision we make. And then we have our focus values like innovation and courage, which act as accelerators for us, helping us adapt, take smart risks, and lead through change. And together they give us both stability and the momentum, and confidence to stay true to who we are and the boldness that we shape to shape what's next. But purpose is the reason we exist in the first place. And it's beyond profit. It's what drives our decisions, the culture that we have, and the relationships that we make. And when values are clear for us, purpose becomes actionable. It guides hiring, partnerships, and even how we respond to global challenges. And we all know we're seeing a few of those. You can change the slide. So this is our organizational purpose and values. On the left-hand side, you can see our purpose here is to create a future a future where everyone can flourish. So really big, bold purpose that our entire organization has helped to craft. And the three main values that we live by: authentic connection, collective strength, and that courageous leadership. But I want to show you how these values come into life and how will come to life in the work that we do. So this is an example here. So a lot of people in the room will know BC Tree Fruits, a company that's been woven into the fabric of the entire region, not just Kelowna, but the entire region. And they declared bankruptcy, unfortunately. But it wasn't just a business event. It was this was about livelihoods, heritage, and the strength of our local food system. And this was a moment for courageous leadership for us. So our team at Valley First didn't hesitate. We partnered with a company called Wildstone Construction down in Penticton and Algoma Orchards. And together we crafted a creative multi-million-dollar facility and structure and solution in under a month. We put that together. Now, it took some serious thinking, bold thinking, and the willingness of many to move quickly because we were, there was a lot of uncertainty at the time. Now, but it wasn't just about the deal itself. We all like to get deals done and do deals and transactions, but it was about the authentic connection that we built. We listened to the growers, the families, and the local businesses, and we understood what was at stake. It wasn't just about BC Tree Fruits. And we worked side by side with our partners to ensure that that packing facility reopened and the jobs were secured, and the Okanagan growers, which have just come off the back of the best year in the best part of 20 odd years, they can keep shipping their fruit through the Canadian channels. But most importantly, this is a story of collective strength. It took combined efforts of our team, our partners, and the community to turn this crisis into an opportunity. But by working together, we protected those local jobs and we preserved that vital part of our heritage. And again, we strengthened that domestic food supply chain. But this is what it means to live out our values and lead with courage, build those connections, and harness our collective strength to create lasting impact right here at home. But I want to zoom out a second. I'm just going to take my jacket because it's absolutely baking up here. But I just want to zoom out a little bit and look at some of the global forces that are shaping our world right now. And we've got climate change, we've got geopolitical shifts going on all over the place. AI is a big one, and a little bit of economic volatility at the moment. But these forces don't just affect governments or corporations. They're showing up in the communities that we're living in. We're all living in across Alberta, across BC. And so, for example, ESG isn't just a boardroom acronym. We're seeing that it's influencing local businesses and how they invest, how families think about their legacy right now, and how advisors guide their clients. You can do the next one. But I want to talk about AI, because AI isn't just a headline. It's fundamentally changing the way that we're doing business right here in BC. And recent studies show that AI adoption could save BC workers up to 125 hours and boost productivity by 8%. I didn't even use AI to find those stats either. So thanks, CBC. But with more than 120,000 new tech-related jobs opening over the next 10 years, those AI skills are quickly becoming essential to everyone in the workforce. But that's why at Valley First and First West, across our organization, we didn't wait on the sidelines. We've rolled out Microsoft Copilot to the entire organization. And we were the first in Canada for financial institutions to do that as well. And what we're finding is that this isn't just a tech upgrade. This is a strategic move for us to help us to empower our teams in this ever-changing time. And Copilot is helping our people automate routine tasks, draft documents, analyze data, and even improve member service. It's freeing up time for deeper conversations, better advice, which is what our members are looking for, and more meaningful work. And for example, our commercial teams, and this is something that we built last week using an agent, but we can now spread financials using an agent that we built internally. Historically, we would have had to go out to market, RFP or RFI, the whole thing, and then try and get somebody to build us a spreading tool or buy it as part of a package. But now actually, internally, we were able to build that by empowering our team. But it's stuff like this that takes courageous leadership. And it's even helping our member service teams at the moment, you know, when it comes to communication. We all know trying to get communication from banks and financial institutions can be a challenge. But we're utilizing this to help enable our teams to communicate quickly, effectively, and deliver the message that we need to. But I want to talk about climate change next. So if you can change the next slide. So those from Kelowna will recognize some of these. This is the McDonald Creek wildfire that swept through West Kelowna and the surrounding area, and it was forced over 35,000 people to be evacuated and put thousands more on alert. And it destroyed and damaged nearly 190 structures and became one of the most significant emergencies that our region here has had in its history. But we responded to this as well. When we responded, we took a step back. And for our members, we built in emergency relief measures, so loan payment deferrals, expedited insurance claims support, and then access to emergency funds as well. For our community, we did donations through the local relief funds. We partnered with the food bank as well, which is a big partnership of ours. It's been a long strategic partnership of ours. And then we had volunteers for the evacuation centers as well. But for our people, which was the big thing, when you suddenly got 35,000 people evacuated, that impacted a large number of our employees across our organization. But we think safety first. Take Maslow's hierarchy of needs, physiological, or I can't even say that, physiological at the bottom. And then what's the next one? I've got a slide. The next slide has it on. It's gone right out of my mind. But we looked at that and thought, okay, well, we need to create a safe space for our people. What can we do? So safety first, so remote working, flexible schedules. But what we did as well is we put 4 hotels on standby. So any of our employees could walk into a hotel, get 2 or 3 days accommodation paid for, covered, and supported, because the evacuation center here at Prospera Place was under so much pressure, because when the fire jumped the lake, we weren't expecting that. Everybody kept telling me, because I was stood there and saying, oh, well, the fire jumped the lake, and everybody assured me it wouldn't jump the lake, and it jumped the lake. So we weren't expecting that. The city wasn't expecting it either. But we set it up so our people could go to those hotels, get straight in, you know, find safety, have that safe space, and be able to support their families. But it matters because moments like this remind us that purpose isn't just abstract, it's practical. But those foundation values of integrity and community, they guided every decision that we made. And while our focus values of innovation and courage helped us act quickly and creatively to support those who need us most. And these pictures here, just quickly, this is the one in the middle actually is the shot from my house as I opened the garage door after it jumped the lake. So, and then this one is the community that we built at the townhomes at the Manteo. We didn't want to be too miserable or stressed, so we just ended up having barbecues for 3 or 4 days. Well, in fact, a week. We were there for a good 10 days. But it's about creating community and supporting each other through that time. But I want to talk just briefly, and then I'll wrap up here. We launched a community initiative here focused on financial literacy as well, and for youth. And it was inspired by global data on generational wealth gaps. But we wanted to tailor that to local needs. And our focus was education, equity, and empowerment. And that's what shaped the program. If you could jump 2 slides, actually. Oh, no, sorry. Oh, no, this is not the updated deck, don't worry. But the result was stronger community ties, better outcomes for families, and renewed sense of purpose for our team. But this is how we try and connect. We connect global with local. And again, that's through values in action. Now, at Value First, our commitment to values and purpose drives everything we do. We include how we respond to global forces like ESG and social resilience. And instead of treating ESG as just a corporate buzzword, we translate it into real targeted support for our communities. And through Value First and the First West Foundation that we have, we've provided both unrestricted and program-specific grants to a lot of organizations within our markets. And they focus on food security, youth mental health, and family support. And these investments aren't just numbers on a slide. They represent real dollars making a difference for local families and youth. So jumping to my final slide. For us, this is what courageous leadership looks like. It's not just about numbers for us. It's about the trust, the connection, and showing up for our communities. So we've built bridges that empower people to thrive. And in doing so, we've lived out our values too, which is that authentic connection, that collective strength and service with purpose. So what I want to share in the real takeaways for tonight. So what's the real takeaways for tonight? For us, purpose isn't a luxury. It's a necessity. And values aren't soft. They're strategic. And in a world of uncertainty, they offer clarity. And in a world of complexity, they offer cohesion. But here's the challenge, and here's the opportunity. How do we move from global vision to local impact? How do we make purpose practical every day? And every day in our work and in our communities? Now, at Andersen's, you're already shaping the future, advising, and you're building and leading with integrity. But my invitation to you is simple. Let's put purpose into practice. Let's connect our global vision to the needs, hopes, and strengths of our local communities. So I ask you, questions are on the slide, and you don't have to answer it now, you take it away. What values guide your work? How does your purpose show up in your decisions? What impact will you leave, not just on the balance sheet, but on the lives of those around you? And I think together we can build a future where global excellence is rooted in local integrity, and where every action, every partnership, and every decision is driven by purpose. So with that, I say thank you. And thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, just warm up here, right?
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm so glad you showed the way, because I was sweating too. The thing that I really take away, Simon, from your words, and this is a point of challenge to all of you in your own practices, in your own businesses, and in your own personal life. We can only approach things from 2 areas. And I get this from a breakfast that I had with Peter Comrie. If you don't know him, make sure you know him before you leave the room. We were having breakfast yesterday morning, and he just reminded me that we can only, we create from one of 2 positions. We either create from love or from fear. And the values that show up that are attached to love or fear, the value attached to love is giving. And I think that ties in completely with what Valley First and Simon, what you're doing within the community and from a global perspective, which is fabulous. the value that's attached to fear is taking. And I think we have to really, you can be really, really critical in your observations about where people are coming from, whether they're giving or whether they're taking. In a personal relationship, in a marriage, in a business, in a banking relationship, everything. You can really evaluate it from that perspective. Is it coming from love or fear? And the criteria to evaluate is giving or taking. So thank you very much. I'd like to bring Stephen Flynn up, and it's been my distinct pleasure to work with the Andersen team. It's a great group of people, and the whole idea of this Wealth and Wisdom series, the idea is to be giving. It's to give back into the community as we build relationships with people to help guide and stretch thinking that will ultimately always provide value and benefit within the communities that we work in. So without further ado, Stephen. So which direction? It's a test.
Let me try. It's probably where you pointed. Yeah. Perfect. Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Bryce. Thank you, Simon. There's wealth and there's wisdom, and I think that's kind of what the theme is today. And we talked a bit about some of the wisdom that Simon shared today about the importance of community and the importance of family and kind of building that and locally. And that's actually very inspiring to hear. And then my job is to protect and grow that wealth. Is this the segue to talk about tax versus all the inspiring things you talked about? Fantastic, fantastic. Well, a little bit. We had it. Oh, there we go. We got it perfect. A little bit about Andersen. So we are a CPA firm. We are about 52, 53 people in Western Canada. We are in Vancouver, we're in Calgary, and we're in Edmonton. We don't have an office in Kelowna here. 30 years ago, I got to spend 2 summers working here. I was with Ernst & Young. I was on the audit team for Western Star Trucks. I have incredibly fond memories of that job and learning everything about not only the manufacturing industry, but there was a government contract that built military vehicles. There was an IPO that they went public on. It was an absolutely fantastic summer and winter in Kelowna, and I miss it. And that just tells me at some point we should have an office here. So we'll keep trying. We're different as a CPA firm. We focus on Canadian, US cross-border taxation. Our clients typically have US and Canadian needs. I'm in private client services, so my clients will typically be US citizens, they'll be resident in Canada, they'll be taxed in both countries. They will be Canadians who have US real property interests. They've got business interests. I'm seeing more and more people who are moving back and forth. I'm seeing people in the US that are fed up with the administration, that cannot stand living in the US, and they're coming to Canada. Doesn't matter what happens. I'm seeing young entrepreneurs in Canada that have raised some money. They've got a technology startup, they got AI, goals and their code writing, and they say, I can't be in Canada to do this. I got to be in San Francisco. I got to be in Charlotte, North Carolina, whatever it is. So we see a lot of that. Bryce said something in his introduction today that really stuck with me. When we developed our first mission statement about 6 years ago, we came up with we build trusted relationships and custom tax solutions. And trusted relationships, what that's meant to me in my 20 plus years is do the right thing for the client. Andersen's growing. We're adding, 20 years ago it was Warren Duke and myself in our kitchen tables building this firm. We're 50 plus people. We're adding all these different service lines. But Bryce said it best. What's the best thing for the client? We do lots of work with Canadian CPA firms, and they have the relationship and they prepare the financial statements. They do Canadian tax planning. They don't have any US ability. The worst thing I could do is come in and say, I'll do everything and take that client. That doesn't build trust. That doesn't give anyone confidence. We're complementary in those situations. And what we want to do is to be able to say, you've got a US tax need, we'll help you solve that. And I think that grows the confidence around. We get lots of referrals that way. The thing that makes me really proud is over the decades when a Canadian CPA who's got his own firm will just come to me and say, hey, you need to call this client. He's my client. I'll be on the call, I won't be on the call. There's a trust element there. I'm not doing anything untoward, and we're working together on that. I think that Bryce said that very well. So my job today, and this slide is probably, I probably got 21 slides here. I'm not going to cover them all. I may skip across some of them. We're going to email these slides to you, so you'll have them. So you don't have to take notes. You don't have to worry if you miss something. Simon and I are saving time at the end for questions. I've been told already, I got a bunch of questions coming from one of these tables over here, which is fantastic. So I do want to cover some of the highlights on this, but if there's something on the slide you see or some other question you have, feel free. We got lots of time at the end to answer your questions. This summer, something called the Big Beautiful Bill Act was enacted. This was one of Trump's promises in his campaign. It was signed the 4th of July. There were a number of changes that impacted Americans, and there was everything from no tax on certain amounts of tips and on overtime. There were changes on state tax deductions. Not a lot of these things mean a lot to Canadians. There are a few that came out of here that do mean something to us, and one of them is something called estate or death tax. The idea here is that if you pass away and if you own a U.S. situs asset, and U.S. situs assets in general terms, U.S. real estate, stocks in U.S. companies. So if you had stock in Amazon or stock in Google, that would be a U.S. situs asset. U.S. businesses you might own. If you pass away and you own these things, then you're actually subject to a U.S. death tax, even though you're not a U.S. citizen, even though you don't live in the U.S. And you may have never lived in the U.S. But those taxes, those assets are subject to this estate tax. And there's a complicated formula that kind of goes through everything. But one of the key changes here is that your lifetime limit, which was $7 million going to be next year if we didn't pass any changes. If you go 15 years ago, it was $1 million. Now it's been increased to 15 million US. And for a married couple, that's $30 million. So for most Canadians, they don't have to worry about estate taxes on their stock in US bank stocks or their property in Scottsdale or in Hawaii. So that's a permanent impact, and that can really help. One of the other unique changes here is something that kind of caught people by surprise, and it bounced back and forth. It was something called a remittance tax, and this has an impact potentially on Canadians. The idea here is that the U.S. is concerned over funds that are leaving the United States. And so if funds leave the United States, they could be subject to a 1% tax on the amount of money leaving the United States. And so it's a fee. It's not really a tax. It's not a calculation on income or anything else. It's a fee. But the idea here is that if cash or money orders are sent out of the United States, then you better send 101% because 1% is going to be lost. Now, it's a concern because this tax or this remittance fee comes into effect in 2026. So it's coming very quickly. There's some very big exemptions that probably help most Canadians. And that is if you bank with an organization that's covered under something called the Bank Secrecy Act in the United States, which would be pretty much every chartered bank in the US. It'd be most foreign affiliates of banks. It'd be most first world banks that have a connection to the United States. You probably don't have this fee. And so where this is hitting, we think, is on wire transfers. You go down to a Western Union or whatever you call it. If you're trying to kind of put up cash to a third-party service that's transferring it, this could apply. And so, your biggest question should be, if you're into this situation, maybe you've sold real estate, maybe you're trading on some sort of foreign market or a crypto market or something else like that could get hit by this. You got to ask that question of who's transmitting is, are you subject to this tax? And are there other ways around this? There should be other ways around this, but it will catch people by surprise as soon as January. And the IRS is still kind of working on trying to publish rules and regulations and everything else for this. Rather than do stuff in the big, beautiful bill, President Trump decided to sign an executive order. He did hundreds of those, if you remember, back in January and February, that got people incredibly excited. And it was all sorts of rules and immigration and everything else. But one of the executive orders signed in March was to direct the United States Treasury to stop sending checks, because there was something like a 16 greater time, there was 16 more likely times that that check's going to be lost, stolen, it's going to be fraudulent. So starting October 1st, starting now, if you have a tax refund, they're not supposed to mail you a check. Doesn't mean you lose your refund. I'd love to phone the IRS and find out exactly how you're going to process this, but it's been 6 days since the government shut down, and believe it or not, the IRS is generally closed. So they're supposed to be over the next couple months creating a bunch of kind of rules and regulations and guides to say how we're going to enforce this, but they don't have the person power to do it right now. The idea here is that what they want people to do is sign up for a bank account, a US bank account, not just a US dollar bank account, but an actual US bank account with the routing numbers and everything else. And that would then go on your tax return and the money would be transmitted electronically. It makes some sense. I get that. There are exceptions to this rule. If people don't have the ability to get a bank account in the United States, there would be exceptions. It's one that is very unclear how it's being enforced. But when we work through, and I'm going to go through some examples in a second here, there are ways to help you with this, because what I find with mail from the United States, from the IRS in particular, is it goes on an unbelievable route. And so if for example, a lot of our returns get filed to Austin, Texas, and they'll get processed there, but they'll generate the letter and then it'll get kind of sent to Philadelphia. Okay, so it goes east for a while and it gets there for a couple of weeks and it gets batched and then it gets put in a truck or whatever it is, or a rail car, and it gets up to Toronto. And great, so your letter's in Toronto and a couple of weeks goes by and someone then sorts it in the mail. And this is assuming no one's on strike, because now it's even worse. At some point then, Canada Post will kind of put it in its own system and it'll get to you. You may find that these letters or these checks from the IRS take 60 days to get delivered. And oftentimes we're getting letters from the IRS that say, hey, you got to respond in 30 days, but it was 30 days ago and you're already past due. So the same thing with checks. I think this is actually not the worst thing. It's just getting our clients and getting Canadians to get US bank accounts. That is going to, be a bit of a challenge. Simon, I don't know if that's something you guys have a solution for with your clients, or? Absolutely. Yeah. So. What did you say? My left ear? Ah, you were right. One of the things I want to talk about is selling US real property. So this is something we see quite often is Canadians are starting to kind of look at what they have in the United States. And if it's everything from being uncomfortable being in the US to getting older to, seeing that the currency's moved, the gains have gone up, maybe it's time to sell. It's becoming more and more expensive. It was great 10 years ago when you had a property in the US, the dollar was at par. Now your operating costs are at $1.40. And so it's more expensive to operate. So, for whatever reason, people are starting to look to sell. And one of the things that happens when you sell US real property is, if you're not a US citizen and if you're not a US resident, then the US puts the pressure and the onus on the buyer and basically says, if you're going to sell property, you have to ask a question. You, seller, are you a US person? And for a lot of us that are not US citizens, that are not US residents, we have to answer no. And so there's anything up to a 15% US federal tax withheld on that sale that the escrow agent keeps, that you don't get those proceeds right away, and they effectively get sent to the IRS as a prepayment of your final tax. And one of the problems with this is that 15%, let's get 2 slides here. Do I have to hold my ear twice? One of the bad news is that this tax is on your gross selling price. It's not on your net. It's not on your gain. So if you think of that place you bought 3 years ago, let's say it's in Hawaii and it's $3 million and it hasn't really gone up in value much, or you've put some money into it. And so maybe you got 3.2 million from it, but you didn't make any money on it. Buyer doesn't care. Buyer's obligation is to take 15% of 3.2 million, call that $480,000, and that sits in escrow. And typically what we see is that money is gone to the IRS within about 15 days after closing. There's provisions under the code that say you can file an application, you can make them wait because we didn't make 3.2 million on the sale, we made nothing. Escrow agencies don't care. It's a high volume, low margin business. They need that off their shelf to get their $400 fee, and they will just push that money to the IRS. And what we often see is they make mistakes. And escrow agencies don't see foreign taxes very often. So we've seen things where they confuse the buyer's name and the seller's name. We can see things where they confuse state taxes and federal taxes and they switch the numbers. We've seen all sorts of stuff. And when a big check and a bunch of misinformation gets sent to the IRS, you can imagine the chaos that happens. And sadly, when it's not done properly, it can take years to get your money back. Because typically, and again, in my example, that client is owed $480,000 and it'll sit with the IRS for years and years. And it's frustrating because it takes firms like ours, it takes lawyers, it takes phone calls, it takes applications. And yeah, you'll get interest at a low rate, but for a lot of our clients, they're just really nervous to say, well, my money's gone. I'll never get it back. And you know, clients do all sorts of things to try and, you know, not do this properly. And what we say to them is, if you want to avoid this, if you want to try and get this right, there's steps you can take all the way through the process. And I would say to you, perfect. I would say to you, you know, some of the problems here are everything from, you know, no planning on how you should own this when you sell it to when money gets sent in, if you don't have a taxpayer number, that money's going to get misappropriated, misplaced. Again, we talked about kind of the delays, the closing and everything else like that. One of the things we do, and this isn't very exciting tax planning, but this is process and it's incredibly value added, is we go all the way through the process and we talk to the client and say, let's go start to finish on this. Let's get you a taxpayer number right out of the gate. There's an application process. You have to get someone to certify the passport. I've done this for lots of clients. It's incredibly complicated. I take the passport, I hold it up and say, is this you? And it often is. And therefore I can sign something to, yeah, that's you. So we get that in advance. We always tell the client, when you get to the escrow agent, when you get to closing, send us the documents, get us introduced, spend some time. Let's look through all this information to make sure everything's in the right boxes in the right places. We get them a US bank account. We get that set up in advance so that we know some refunds coming. Let's make sure it gets deposited in there. When we go to file the tax return, we tell them, get your information together right away. You know, let's say you sold tomorrow, October 10th, and we can file that tax return next spring. But if you sold October 10th, if you're organized, you know what you sold it for. You know what your cost basis is. You can gather all your receipts. You can put a file together in the next 30 days that says this is what's going to happen because nothing else is going to happen. You sold it. So when we get to January or February, the moment the tax forms are available and you can start filing, let's file in January and February. Let's not wait till October next year. Let's get it done now. And most importantly, let's electronically file it. And that may sound simple. And it isn't simple in the US because of all the different things that happen. I mean, right now, if you tried to send something to the IRS, well, they're closed. That's no good. Believe it or not, we're getting hit with tariffs on courier packages. So tax returns have a tariff on them and it's $70 or $80 every time we send it. So, and to close, and I know we're kind of at time here. In my example, rather than going through and, you know, waiting 3 years for a refund of $14,000, and I did this with a client where we got all that stuff I described to you, we got it all lined up, we got it ready to go, and we filed in February, and I'm not lying on this, by the end of March, that client had their federal and their state tax refund deposited in their bank account 45 days. And we knew that was going to happen. Client was amazed at that. And that's the kind of stuff I want to have for clients. Like I said, not incredibly fun planning. Like there's not anything creative out of it. It's just process. So there's lots more information on these slides. We'll get them sent out. And I think that's my time. So Bryce, do you want to?
Given the nature of the audience, everybody knows the value of specialization. And what Andersen provides in the specialization on cross-border, I think you already know. You've got some experience with it, I'm sure. Truth be told, it's just invaluable. And in building a team, as Stephen described it, as not being concerned about relationship risk is so vital. I think that's a really good thing. So